Welcome into episode 427 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, the Bruins got a 7-2 win over the New Jersey Devils in New Jersey last night. Of course, we were all expecting that result. So we will break all of that down. There were certainly some milestones. And also, the Bruins' remaining schedule. They have 2 games at home, one against those New Jersey Devils and also against the Chicago Blackhawks, and they also travel to Pittsburgh. So in this race for the highest draft position, the Bruins all of a sudden, clearly, apparently, judging by last night, and then the standings where Pittsburgh and Chicago stand, they have 3 winnable games on this remaining schedule, and the Bruins could go 3-0 and run the table, and they can also go 0-3. I have no idea at this point, but Bridget and Scott, let's get your thoughts on last night and everything Bruins.
Yeah, that's the thing is like they're a bad team, and when you're a bad team, every game is losable. But yeah, you're also, whether it's just that sheer pride or talent at the top of your lineup, which I'll get into in a moment for my opening shift, you're gonna win some. And like the Devils are kind of a team that is limping. They're really limping to the finish line. They don't have positioning to play for. Like they're going to be the 3 seed in the Metro Division. They're going to face Carolina in the first round. They don't have Jack Hughes or Dougie Hamilton. So it's like, that feels like a team that doesn't, it's probably just going to bow out pretty easily. I mean, we'll see, but they're too banged up and they don't really have a whole heck of a lot to play for at this point. But you see it with all these other teams down there too, like that they've all pulled out some wins where you're like, wouldn't have predicted that. I think Pittsburgh won again Tuesday night. So, Buffalo won again. Like all of a sudden, Buffalo's going on their usual late season push where it's way too late. And all of a sudden they play themselves into the 9th pick instead of being top 3. But yeah, I'll get to my opening shift though, and that is about David Pastrnak, who had 3 more points Tuesday night in this win, and now has 100 on the season. Got there real fast because he has 11 points in the last 3 games. He now has a 7-game point streak. It's his 3rd straight 100-point season, which makes him only the 3rd player in Bruins history to do that. Bobby Orr did it 6 straight seasons from 69 to 75. And Phil Esposito did it 5 straight from 70 to 75. And that's it. That's the whole list. So that's the company that he's in. He just keeps setting records and he keeps producing on, as we all know, a bad team where he doesn't have a great supporting cast. He has, with all due respect to Morgan Geekie, who got to 30 goals last night for the first time, and has obviously had a very good season in his own right. That's not the same as Nikita Kucherov being on a line with Braden Point and Jake Gensel. It's not the same as Nathan McKinnon having Martin Necas on his wing and taking the vast majority of his 5-on-5 shifts with Cale Makar out there as well. Like it's just very different what Pastrnak is working with, and what he's doing to me, like, still puts him, even though he's on one of the 5 worst teams in the league, puts him in the MVP conversation, in the Hart Trophy conversation. He's not going to win. He's not going to get my first place vote, but he should get some votes. And I think there is absolutely a case to be made for him being top 5. He's 4th in the league in scoring. And, maybe I'll save some of these stats, but I posted it on weei.com for Wednesday morning. People can go check it out, but there's just a ton of numbers in there that show you like just how much he is driving this offense by himself. One of them we touched on our last podcast. He has a point on over 47% of all Bruins goals this season, which is easily the highest percentage in the league. Nathan McKinnon is second at, I think it's 43.9%. He had points on 13 straight goals until Jacob Lauko scored an unassisted goal in the second period last night. Like, it's just, it's just crazy. And I just think he deserves a ton of credit for continuing to play like this in a season where, it would have been easy for him to just kind of roll over knowing that the team's not going anywhere. And he hasn't. And it's like, yeah, that matters for these records and accolades, but it also matters as a team leader, showing that you're still bringing it every night and setting that tone for everyone else.
Yeah, and someone after the game asked him, how does it feel? And he was like, not as good as the last 2 years. Because the last 2 years it meant something and they were going to the playoffs, and this year they're not. So he answered it pretty well, I thought, because he still mentioned how big of a deal it was, but also how it kind of just doesn't feel the same when your team's not going to make the playoffs. And my opening shift has to do with some of the other firsts and milestones that happened in that 7-2 win over New Jersey, because there was a lot that went on. And it was one of those wins like the Carolina win where fans felt good again, right? It was one of those games where you're seeing a lot of things that you wanted to see. Our last podcast, even in the title, was like, where Bruins not getting any depth offense or whatever. And then all of a sudden this game, a bunch of different guys contribute. And so I'll get into that now. And Michael Callahan scored his first goal in the NHL. He's 16 games in, all of those games with the Bruins this season. Nice to see him score from the blue line. And Geekie goes over and grabs the puck and makes sure that he has it for his first NHL goal. And then Fraser Minten scores his first goal as a Bruin. So you grab that puck. And Fabian Lysell gets his first NHL point on Casey Middlestats' goal. And Morgan Geekie, like Scott brought up during his opening shift, got his 30th goal, which is his first 30-goal season. And he was saying that after the game that Pastrnak went to go grab that puck to give it to him, but he was going to grab that puck to give it to Pastrnak because it was the same one that Pasta got his 100th point on. So they both were, I guess they're going to have to split the puck in half because they both wanted to give it to the other one, which was kind of sweet. But it was nice to see some of the younger guys get their firsts with the Bruins or in the NHL. And it was a feel-good win, even though you probably wanted them to lose. But I will give you a little bit of a silver lining in terms of the draft positioning. Buffalo and Pittsburgh also won. So that meant that you kept pace there. And those are two teams that are right around the same spot. So not quite as bad as if those guys had lost.
Yeah, Seattle did lose though, so you're nipping at Seattle's heels, potentially sliding down to 6th.
Yeah, Seattle and Philadelphia, those are the two teams I think the Bruins have to kind of watch out for. Again, you don't want to sleep on a Pittsburgh or a Buffalo but they do have a bit of a gap on the Bruins right now. When it comes to how many games are remaining, I don't know if it's sizable is the right word, but it's significant. But Philly and Seattle, they're definitely a little too close for comfort. But I do believe Philly has 2 games in hand on Boston. And
Philly
Seattle has 1.
Again, like all these teams can lose to anyone, but Philly has a very easy schedule. I think they're facing like 3 of the other bottom 5 or 6 teams down the stretch.
One of them is Buffalo, which is the last game of the year. So if you're a Bruins fan, you want the Flyers winning that game, given Buffalo's recent lead on Boston. But Bridget mentions milestones for some of the younger players in Boston. Scott mentions a milestone for David Pastrnak, 3rd consecutive year, 100 points, 3rd consecutive year, 40-plus point gap on the next leading scorer in Boston. I think Scott makes great points about Pastrnak needing to be in the conversation for MVP. I understand that the voters and fans will probably put a playoff team on that pedestal. Who's the most valuable player on a playoff team? And I totally understand that. Obviously, the Bruins are one of the worst teams in the league, but that doesn't mean that Pastrnak isn't as valuable to his team as anybody. It's just that the team is just so bad around him. There was no prayer for them this year. But the other milestone that happened, and we were kicking ourselves last episode because we forgot to get to this. And to be fair, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Bruins. And I think that what I'm going to bring up deserves more than just, a tip of the cap. We should talk about this for a little bit longer. And so we will today. But that's Alex Ovechkin capturing the NHL goal scoring record. He surpasses none other than Wayne Gretzky, who was the previous holder at 894 goals. The great one accomplished that in 1,487 games. So 894 goals, 1,487 games. Alex Ovechkin tied him in one less game. Ovechkin in game 1486 got 894. And Bridget and Scott, you guys mentioned that on Sunday Skate. But it was the following game in game 1487 where Alex Ovechkin got goal 895. So just incredible accomplishment. I need to say no more. When you're the greatest goal scorer in league history, that speaks for itself. Him accomplishing it in the same amount of games as Gretzky got 894 to tie Gretzky a game before, which is already a little feather in the cap for Ovechkin, but then to surpass him in the same games played. What a bizarre set of circumstances. But nonetheless, guys, the greatest goal scorer the game has ever seen is now Alexander Ovechkin. And what an accomplishment. Congratulations to him and everybody, friends, family, the organization, the league, and just the fans who've had the chance to watch him for the last 20 years. And I want to get your guys' opinion on him. We can talk about that more as well.
Yeah, I mean, relative to his era, like now he has the record to prove it, but to me, Ovechkin was already the greatest goal scorer in NHL history because of the era that he was doing it in, which through really the prime years of his career in the 2010s was an era that was down in goal scoring. You were approaching, I have like some of the league averages up right now, and around 2011 to 2017, NHL's average teams are averaging 2.65 to 2.7 goals per game. And that was basically right on par with like the clutch and grab neutral zone trap days of the late 90s, which only overlap with the very end of Wayne Gretzky's career. Obviously, Gretzky got to play most of his career in his best years in the 80s, which was other than like some very, very early years of the NHL, was the highest scoring era in modern NHL history, where you had teams averaging one year, they actually averaged 4 goals a game. I think 81, 82. The average by team was just over 4 goals per game. It's just a much higher scoring era. So, and the other part of this is like, you have to give the disclaimer, right? Of like, no one is saying Alex Ovechkin is a better all around player than Wayne Gretzky. We all understand Gretzky still has the points record by 1.5 miles over everyone. Like, got it. We're not talking about that. Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. Just pure ability to put the puck in the net. No one's been better at it. No one's done it more. And relative to their era, no one's been better at it.
Yeah, it was crazy too, the ceremony. I didn't realize they were going to have that elaborate a ceremony. I know that Wayne Gretzky had been traveling along to each of the games, seeing, one was going to be the day that the record got broken. And then it's such a weird play too that he scores on. He just kind of like steps into it, coming into the zone, and it goes in. And then he penguin dives and he almost gets run over because I don't think anyone knew he was going to slide on his stomach like that. Everyone piles on him. It was a cool sight. I'm sure it was pretty awesome for people who were there to see all of that. And then the ceremony that they had as well. But I mean, he's one of those guys where he came into the league right when I was really starting to be a big hockey fan. And like watching him and Crosby kind of go back and forth for years and people having the argument about, who was the better player between the two of them, because they're both awesome. We're both lucky that we got to see them both play. It's just, it's that era that we still are kind of holding on to a little bit. Some of the guys have retired, like Bergeron, Chara, the favorites from that time. A lot of them are retired. And then you see, Ovechkin and Crosby still doing important things this year. Crosby in 4 nations, Ovechkin, breaking this incredible goals record. So it's crazy how long that those guys have held up, and it'll be a sad day when those two guys retire at some point, because I think that like our generation of hockey fans, this was kind of like the prime of watching two guys and that have crazy ability, like just kind of go back and forth. And you picked one or the other to root for, or maybe you like both because you liked hockey. But no, congrats to him. It was cool to watch. I had it tuned in because I knew it's probably happening. So yeah, it was cool.
And yeah, you mentioned Wayne Gretzky was traveling around to the games, Bridget, and I don't think he could have been any more gracious watching somebody eclipse one of his records, which is one of the greatest records that hockey probably has to offer. One of, besides points, right? On an individual
and how much
standpoint.
longer do we think Ovechkin's going to play? Because he's going to start, getting some separation depending on how long he
I
plays.
think another year. He's got one more year left in his contract. Is he 40 right now, or he's turning 40?
I think he's 39 right now, gonna turn 40.
So they're gonna have a playoff run this year. We'll see how far they go, and he'll have one more year. If he plays one more year, I think I see him finishing with at least 30 goals next year.
I can see him playing more than one more year, just because that's kind of how he is. Like it's just like this.
Yeah,
is his life.
Like the thing is like it's gonna be so tempting and easy for him to hang, even if he gets demoted to second line at some point, starts sliding down the lineup, plays 14, 15 minutes, like he's going to want to hang on, because look at how this Capitals team is set up for the future. Like they're having a really good season this year. Again, we'll see what they do in the playoffs, because I do still have some questions about that team and how they hold up in the playoffs. But it's a good team, and they have this like whole wave of prospects coming in, with like Ryan Leonard just getting started, but Andrew Cristall is a high-end prospect. Cole Hudson at BU coming in on defense at some point in the next year or two. Like there's a lot there where like you can probably look around and be like, man, we have like a 5-6 year cup window here. And I know he's not going to play 5 or 6 years, but I could easily see him being like, maybe I hang on for 2 or 3 more and like see, now if they win at some point in there, if they win this year, maybe he just goes out on top. But yeah, I could see him being tempted to hang around for a little bit.
And he would just be a power play specialist, just go stand in his office and just, still score because his shot's so good. I could see him sticking around. Like I could feel like I could see him sticking around to like 45 and just being like, whatever, I'll just play on the power play.
Yeah, it's not very often that you see somebody playing that old at the NHL level. But to your guys' point, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because what I was going to say was he doesn't really, and he would be the first to admit this, he doesn't really take great care of his body as it pertains to how professional athletes normally do. So on the one hand, you could sit there and say, how much longer does he really want to, just keep playing at this level? Does he just want to enjoy his life? But at the same time, it hasn't stopped him to this point living how he wants to live and still playing. So maybe he does play for a little bit longer, because he's built different.
He's second in the NHL in goals per game this season. Like only Leon Draisaitl's averaging more.
He's built different.
Yeah.
But the point I wanted to make about Wayne Gretzky was he has been so gracious throughout this process and so supportive and congratulatory. Did you guys happen to see the conversation that he had with Rick Bowness on TV?
I didn't. I had a little bit of a separate Gretzky thought, but I didn't see this, so you can go with this first.
Basically, Bowness was on. It must have been, I don't know if it was TNT or something. I saw it online. I didn't see it live, but basically Bowness was talking about how it's harder for Ovechkin to accomplish what he did, basically because the skill is so much better, the goalies are so much better, the coaching is so much better. This era of hockey is so much better that for Alex to accomplish what he did, he was kind of speaking between the lines, but it was probably harder for what Wayne to do. He didn't come out and say that exactly, but that was the nature, that was the tone of the sentiment. And Wayne's response, which I thought was a great one, no pun intended. He said, well, the 80s was a lot different than the 60s, and modern day is a lot different than today. But what I would say is you don't have all the clutching and grabbing today that I had to deal with. Guys shadowing me, grabbing my jersey. Yes, the equipment is much better today, but we had what we had. The goalies aren't as good, but there's also a lot more power plays in today's game and opportunities to create offense. So, Scott, to the point you made, I completely agree with you that Ovechkin has done what he's done when he entered the league in a down era offensively. But there's always going to be pros and cons when you try to compare generations and eras. I guess it's the moral of the story, which is try not to read. I don't like when people try to do too much era comparisons because it's just not fair to the players that were before. And everything's just different. Like there's more challenges that players currently have to face. And there's also more perks that current players have, which is more power plays and better equipment. So it goes both ways is my point. And I just found the conversation to be interesting.
I will say, so I don't know. Like I said, I didn't hear it, so I don't know specifically if he did bring up power plays. That is not accurate. If he said that, there were more power plays in the 80s than there are now. And again, I know that because I was just looking
is that fact? Is that real?
Yeah. Because I know that because I was just looking at the averages, and yeah, for the majority of the 80s, teams are getting about four power play opportunities per game, and actually spiked up over 5 in like 87 to 89. This season, by the way, there was an article. I should have pulled it up. I think it was either The Athletic or ESPN, like maybe a month ago now, about how many fewer power plays there's been this season, because we had been in a stretch where teams were getting about 3 power plays per game, and this year it dropped down to 2.7. And like no one really had an explanation for why there's just significantly fewer penalties being called this year than even last year. So yeah, I would say that point would not be correct.
Well, maybe not right now, but I feel like the first half of Ovi's career, it probably was the case for sure.
Right after the lockout, it spiked up.
Yeah,
but that didn't really last very long. It lasted like for 5 years, maybe, and then power plays started trending down again.
Wow, interesting. Well, anyway, yeah, it was a fascinating conversation, and I'm not a big compare players from different eras because players are products of their surrounding and the here and now for them. And so if you're great in one era, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, would Bobby Orr have been as good of a skater in today's? Well, how are we supposed to know that? And what's Bobby supposed to do about that?
Yeah.
So.
No, you never know. Like you'll have that. I'm sure you have that argument with people. Like I had a bad date once where I got into an argument with someone about this, like about Gretzky, Bobby, or like just throw in Ovechkin. It was a terrible date, so I'm not surprised the guy had some terrible takes. But anyway, I feel like we should get back to the Bruins right now. Does that work with you guys?
Sure.
All right. Where do you guys want to start? Do you guys want to start? Why don't we start with the depth? Because we talked a lot about Pastrnak last episode. We'll get back to him this episode as well. But the fact that some guys are scoring or scored against New Jersey that kind of no-showed some of the other games over the course of the last few weeks, I think is important to get to. And I don't know if you guys want to start with Minten or Lysell, or is there anyone that you really had like a thought on that you wanted to get out there?
I'd like to quickly just go to Lysell first because Scott had an accurate criticism of Lysell's game that I thought last night he actually exemplified what Scott was saying he should be doing more often, which is challenging defense and attacking the middle of the ice, especially in transition. And I thought that he was much better at that last night against New Jersey. He looked to have a little bit more pep in his step, a little bit more confidence. So I just wanted to make that observation here and see what you guys thought about his game last night outside of his first career point.
100%. Like I even tweeted, I was like, where, and I wasn't trying to be sarcastic. Like, I'm like legitimately thinking to myself, like, where has this Fabian Lysell been for the last 7 games? Because yeah, the Fabian Lysell you saw last night was picking up the puck at his own blue line, single-handedly transitioning through the middle of the ice, and then dishing off. Often it was Pavel Zacha on the wing to create space. Then he was driving the net. He had set a screen on a Zacha chance at one point. Was looking for opportunities to shoot. Like, yeah, like that Fabian Lysell, if he plays like that consistently, can be an NHLer and can stick around and help this team. It's just like you see it for not just like a couple shifts, but really consistently all night long Tuesday, where he's looking to attack and he's making smart decisions with the puck on his stick. And you're just like, what? Like, why wasn't that there for 7 games? And now we'll see, right? He's going to play these last 3 games. I don't expect him to get sent down. So let's see if he can finish with, stacking together 4 good games here. Because now if he disappears for the next 3, like, that doesn't help. You can't just have 1 good game out of 10. But that was a 180 over the Fabian Lysell we had been seeing. And I hope he builds off it, because that's like what he was doing last night is really valuable, because this team doesn't have enough transporters of the puck through the neutral zone, and it absolutely can be a strength for him. And for 1 game, it definitely was.
I'll tell you what I think happened. I think he adjusted and started to feel comfortable with the pace at this level. I just feel like there's like a learning curve where you get in and it feels really fast, and then you start to make decisions with the puck really quickly, and you don't have a lot of time to make plays, so you defer. And then as you get a few more games under your belt, you are like, okay, well, I do actually in this situation have a little bit of extra time to do this, or this that I was doing well in the AHL does translate to the NHL, and your brain is starting to comprehend some of the stuff you can and can't get away with. So you're adjusting as you get more experience under your belt. So I think his confidence has started to come into play, because he feels like he now knows when to make certain plays, and his decision making is informed by some experience at the NHL level. So to me, that's what it looked like. His confidence looked like I feel bad for him sometimes, because I feel like sometimes when he's out there, he looks like, he's so wrapped up in trying to just like figure things out that he's not having fun. But it felt like he looked like he was having fun against New Jersey. He saw him smile more. His body language was better. His confidence, like he was standing pretty tall. He was doing what he was supposed to do. And this is what my point was that you can't say that someone is going to be a bust when you haven't given them a chance to make the adjustments. If he's only 9 games in, and at the time we were having this conversation, I think he was like 6 or 7 games in. It's like, you can't just throw someone into the fire. Like, it's just like throwing a baby into a pool and expecting them to swim like right away. No, you have to get swimming lessons. Like, you have to be able to learn and give someone time to.
I mean, people do that though.
Yeah, well, I don't personally think that's a great idea, but but you just give them time to figure it out. And I think you saw him translating, some of his, probably some of the coaching that he's been getting, as well as just the adjustments to understanding the speed of things now. And it was good for him. He got his first point. He's played 9 NHL games at this point this season. He got his first point on middle stats goal, and very happy. So it was nice to see him have that sigh of relief moment, I'm sure, getting his first NHL point.
Let me give an example of throwing somebody into the fire and it not being a good idea. A couple of weeks ago, you guys know I had to go up to Maine, to Sunday River for a bachelor weekend. One of my good buddies is getting married, and I have never once skied in my life. I made that abundantly clear to everybody. Well, I'm getting my ski rentals, which, by the way, were probably 40 years old and they were busted when I got up to the top of the mountain. So I found that out when I got up there. So that's great. But I'm getting my ski stuff. And you know how this thing works. All the guys that are avid skiers, they already took off of the mountain. They were on their black diamonds and doing whatever
Yeah,
without
and
me.
they're telling you it's easy, Brian. You'll get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Gravity, man.
so all the experienced skiers, they couldn't wait to rise and shine and go to the mountain, and do their thing. So by the time I got to the mountain, I wasn't with those same people. I was with a couple of other beginners who had skied before, but I never had. So I'm getting my ski stuff, and of course they don't allow goggle rentals. So I had to go up and buy goggles. Now I feel like I'm holding people up. Long story short, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't have the opportunity to really look around. I'm trying to walk to the ski lift. You have to go through these like conveyors. You have to show up. I don't even know how to walk on skis. I put skis on for the first time in my life, and next thing I know, 7 minutes later in real time, I'm at the top of a blue. And I said, no, 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 no. We're going too high. I've never skied before. I told you this. Oh, we won't. You son of a bitch. So, and then
Brian, this happened to me before too.
Bridget, then he lifts the bar for the ski slope, okay? Probably 400 yards too early. The wind is gusting. I'm like, I'm about to fall out of this thing. I'm not supposed to be this high. 7 minutes after I put skis on for the first time in my life, I'm at the top of a blue. I can't even walk on skis, let alone go down this thing. So I'm pissed, but at this point I'm like, there's nothing else I can do. I have to get down this mountain now. And of course, at the top of the mountain, I took a massive fall, smacked my head, whiplash the next day. And then I got the hang of it a little bit. But the conditions, guys, it was late March. So it was a mixture of ice, slush, and dirt. Could you imagine somebody, and if you're a skier out there, you would know, to go from putting ski boots on, which by the way go up to your kneecaps, talk about clumsy, and skis for the first time in your life, and then not even 10 minutes later you're going down a blue because your friends just don't have any care or concern for you. Oh, we'll throw you into the fire.
But
Brian,
that's not a good example.
my dad did this to me when I was 18. My dad did this to me. My dad said, "You don't need a lesson. We're going to bring you up to the top. We're just going to let you go." And the fact that I lived is actually probably only because I knew how to skate. Because I only knew how to go straight. No one told me how to slow down, turn, stop, nothing.
Yeah.
My brother's a great skier. I'm going so fast down the mountain that even my brother can't catch me because I'm just going straight. And I'm going it was a blue, and I'm going at this split in the trail where they had like a cement pylon with the thing that shoots out the snow.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped short of it by like 2 feet. I probably would have died if I didn't know how to skate because I hockey stopped right in front of it. I made it down the mountain without falling. But as soon as I got down to the bottom, I immediately started crying because I knew I almost died. And I just started crying, and I said, if I don't get another lesson, if I don't get a lesson, I am not going back up to the top. But yes, Brian, I know what you mean. You just have to find a way to spread your wings and fly.
But what I'm getting out of all this is that we've really missed an opportunity for some great skate pod social media content.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, guys, it was something. It was truly something. I know that if you're a skier out there and you know about black diamonds and double blacks, and you know, obviously a blue is considered moderate, right? But again, for only having skis on for about 10 minutes real time for the first time, I couldn't even walk. And it's steep at the top of a blue. It gets a little bit better, but in any event, you know, skiing
Where
down
were
a
we?
well, I'm getting back to it. So I think it's honestly skiing down a blue for the first time in March with slush, snow, and dirt is pretty similar to Fabian Lysell hitting the NHL with this roster around him as well. It's tough sledding, as they say. So to Bridget's point about adjusting, it's absolutely true. Like you can work on good habits down in the minors and execute them, but the game happens that much quicker and faster that the decision making, it's an adjustment period. And the three of us on here, none of us were not acknowledging that. And when Scott was criticizing Lysell, he wasn't saying he was a bust at all. So yes, but now let's see if he can continue this forward in the remaining games.
Yeah, and what I would say as well, and like I think I probably made this point, is he's getting this much time to adjust and learn and bounce back because they're out of it. Because they're not a good team and they can afford to give him the time to do this. If this was a more competitive team competing for a playoff spot, he wouldn't get 8 or 9 games to figure it out. You'd get 2 or 3, and if there wasn't tangible signs of improvement, he'd be back in Providence. So, fair or not, like sometimes you need to figure it out quicker. Sometimes you need to do something to turn heads in your first or second game, because if you don't, you're not going to get an 8th, 9th, 10th game. So he's getting more time because they can afford to give it to him. And to his credit, he finally had the kind of game we've been waiting for. As we've all said, like now let's see if he continues to do it for hopefully three more games here before the end of the season.
Yeah.
And then by the way, then go to Providence and have a really good AHL postseason.
Yeah. And then there's Fraser Minten, who we should talk about too, who got his first goal with the Bruins. Not his first NHL goal because he had he had 2 with Toronto. He played 15 games in Toronto, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points with them. Came to the Bruins, played a few games in Providence, gets the call up. This is his 3rd game with the Bruins. And he has this crazy spin around shot that finds its way into the net. Pretty confident looking shift from him. So he gets his first goal as a Bruin, another one that you got to fish out of the net, grab it for him so he can hang it up somewhere, put it with his other firsts. And I guess we can talk about his progress maybe through 3 games, or just what you've noticed as a whole.
Yeah, that this was another guy who took a clear step last night. I think you had seen some good things from Minten in his first couple games, especially the Carolina game. I thought, along with just about everyone else, had a pretty well. Actually, I won't say along with just about everyone else, because not everyone did play well in that game, but I thought he did. Not so good against Buffalo. But yeah, I liked that line on Tuesday. Thought they did their job in the defensive zone. He did his job, and then they were able to get out the other way and generate some offensive chances. And his goal was a good example of going to the front, being there to collect a rebound. He ended up 50% on faceoffs, which I had noticed, he had struggled his first couple games, which is not unusual. A lot of young players struggle on faceoffs early in their career. Just takes time to kind of learn the tricks of the trade against NHLers who have been doing it for 10 years. But yeah, for the most part, I like what I've seen from Fraser Minten. Like, I think Razor said on Sunday Skate, like he looks like an NHLer, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's here to stay and he's making the team out of camp next year, but I think he's going to have a chance to, because he has the two-way responsibility that gives him a much higher floor than more offensive prospects, where it's like, at the very least, like Fraser Minten can play in your bottom 6 and probably not hurt you. Now, if he can start to build some offense on top of it, then you have a legit third liner, and then you see if there's even more upside from there. But like, start with that and you'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, the goal last night was certainly a nice finish, right? It's a nice spin around shot. What I like the most about that goal is where it was scored from and how you get to that spot in the ice, right? It's where you score goals. It's the middle of the ice. It's the slot. You're not afraid to get a cross check to the ribs. You're not afraid to get a slash to the back of the legs. You're not afraid of any body contact. You're going to where the dirty area, as they say. And I think that he does that throughout the course of play. He gets to the front of the net. He forechecks hard in the corners. He's deep in his own defensive zone, right, to give defenseman outlet passes. So, like I said last episode, to me, especially for a 20-year-old kid, he plays a mature game. He respects the game, and yeah, I've really enjoyed what I've seen out of him. Certainly, like he's gonna have to be an offensive producer at a probably, let's call it a 35 to 45 point pace throughout his career if he's going to be a really good third liner, if that is indeed where he ends up as a third line. But I mean, it's obviously too early to predict that. But as far as what I've seen so far, he plays a mature game, and I've enjoyed seeing a young player respect the details that is required at this level, at any level. But to do it at this level, at a young, ripe age of 20. Again, how old's Matt Patra? We applaud Matt Patra for this. I think they're the same age.
Yeah, Padra's 21 now, so I think Minten's actually like almost a full year younger.
So he's there you go.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple good hits, so you like the physicality. Reverse hit on Jesper Bratt. I will say the one tough play was on New Jersey's second goal. I think it ends up being Timo Meyer's goal. Eric Hall's shot goes off him. Minten gets a pass in his own slot, and it's a little bit in his skates, so it's not a perfect situation. But he just kind of takes a little too long to find it, and that leads to the turnover. Where, again, like difference between AHL, NHL speed. That's one where, in the NHL, if you don't pick it up cleanly right off the bat, like just whack that thing to the boards and live to fight another day. So that's probably I would just point out as like the one learning moment from last night.
Bridget, can I also just mention one other improvement in the New Jersey game about Minten before you respond to any of this? Is because I did want to mention this last episode, that an area of improvement I need to see from him as well. Obviously, in his first two games, the offense wasn't there, but it's such a small sample that but he hit the eye test was telling me that he wasn't doing great in the face-off circle. And I'm looking at his face-off percentage against Carolina, and he was 36.4% in the draws. And then against Buffalo, he was 33.3% in the draws. Last night, he was 50%. So, obviously, 2 out of 3 games, he's kind of gotten handled at the face-off dot, and that's going to have to be an area of improvement as well. Obviously, he did well against New Jersey, but if you're going to be a center iceman, the most obvious start is in the face-off dot. That's where you start plays, where you gain possession and whatnot. Obviously, it's face-offs are not just center versus center, right? It's the wingers and D helping out, but that's an area as well that I'm going to be watching is his face-off percentage.
I was going to say his physicality, right? Because he's a bigger guy and he seems to be pretty strong on his skates. He's 6'2". He looks big out there. If you go watch him in person, he looks like he's pretty big, and he led the forward group in hits. Now he was only credited with 2, when everyone else was just credited with 1 or none. But I thought I saw him make pretty good body contact more than twice. And I think if he uses his body the way that he can and his size the way that he can, and improves in that, he'll also have that value of being a bigger. I'm not saying like he's going to be the kind of guy that goes out of his way to like make big hits or gets caught out of position trying to do it, and not that it's his role, but the fact that he can be physical is also an asset to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be part of his role. Like, I do think that's going to be part of the expectation is for him to play physical. Maybe, not to the extent of a Mark Kastelik, but yeah, Fraser Minten's going to be counted on to throw some checks, to get in on the forecheck, hit guys, close off plays in the D zone. I think it's in his game, and I think it's, to be a really good bottom 6 forward in the NHL, which again is where he's going to start. That's an important part of it. So, does it have to be, does he have to be a guy that throws 200 hits in a season? maybe not, but I'd say he's going to have to, if he plays 82 games, it's going to be over 100. Yeah, it should definitely be part of his game.
So let's talk Morgan Geekie for a second, if you guys don't mind. Off the top of my head, I believe that he is the first 30-goal scorer in Boston since Louis Eriksson that wasn't named Bergeron, Marchand, or Pastrnak. I think that's accurate.
I don't have this. I don't have the stats, so I'm just trying to think.
DeBrusk hit 29 one year. That was the closest he got.
Yeah.
Krejci never got 30 in that time. So I think we can double check that. But in any event, it's not. There haven't been many, if any, 30-goal scorers in the last, what is that now? Almost 10 years in Boston outside of those three guys. And Morgan Geekie is now one of them. So, and again, we can double check that, but I think that's relatively accurate. And what would you guys say to fans out there that are loving the production from Morgan Geekie this year, but are wondering if he is just that, this version of Louis Eriksson, because Louis Eriksson went on to Vancouver and did nothing, or just that or like Charlie Coyle last year, where you got the most out of him in one given year, but don't expect that going forward, right? Like, are you guys cautiously optimistic about Morgan Geekie being able to maintain this level of production, give or take, going forward? Or are you emphatically optimistic because you don't see any reason why he couldn't, especially if he's playing with Pastrnak in a full year? And by the way, both players got off to really bad starts. So next year, if Pastrnak gets off to a slow start for the first 3 months, just know he's still going to end up with 100 points. Geekie's obviously less of a given, but
I feel better than I think maybe if you're trying to make a Louis Eriksson comparison. But it's funny how big of a difference they're paid as well. Like, Eriksson was getting paid like a legitimate like top 6 forward, whereas Morgan Geekie isn't. And he's got great value, and he's going to be a restricted free agent. So unless someone offer sheets him, you're not going to have a extremely big jump in his pay from this season and this past contract to the next contract that you're going to have to sign with him in the off season. So from an actual like value standpoint, he's got better value. He's really resurrected his career where he hadn't been leaned on really besides like a fourth line role, somewhat of a third line role. And now that he's with David Pastrnak, and the chemistry has been there right along, he's been able to turn himself into a top line guy from a fourth line guy in the course of 2 years. That he deserves some credit for that as well, because if he wasn't able to keep pace with the top guys in the league, he wouldn't be on the top line. He's able to keep up with Pastrnak. He's able to keep up with the other team's top lines in order to slow them down as well. I've been impressed with him, and I think I was someone who early on, when Geekie was first on the team, when they first put him with Pastrnak, said, I think there's something here. Like, I see that they think the game in a similar way. And the more time they've gotten together, the better they've gotten together. And I think it's a positive thing that you're going to probably be able to get him on, once again, a pretty decent deal. Now, how long you want to make it, that's going to be up to Don Sweeney, what kind of term on the contract. But it's nice that he'll be there. And I don't see any reason why you should be separating them next season. So,
yeah, it's what we've talked about. Like, you're not going to fill every hole. So, like, look for combinations that work, that almost serve as, like, yeah, if you can find someone who works with David Pastrnak that you don't have to pay 8, 9, 10 million a year, then go with that, because you're going to need to find value somewhere in your roster. You're going to need to find guys who fit into roles, even if they're not getting paid like a player who traditionally plays in that role. Like, that's just the reality of the Bruins situation. So Morgan Geekie fits with David Pastrnak. We've now been seeing it since December. Like, we're going on 5 months.
Even last year, Scott, they were clicking at the end of the year.
Yeah, true. Like, so it's not really that small of a sample. So yeah, absolutely. You should be planning on starting next season with them on the same line. Um, yeah, I do wonder like what his contract. It feels like 30 goals is one of those things that allows you to go into negotiations with a little more leverage, whether whether they're going to try to say like, hey, that's a product of Pastrnak or not. Like 30 goals is 30 goals. And Brian, you were right on the Louis Erickson stat. It was 15-16 was the last time anyone other than Pastrnak, Bergeron, or Marchand hit 30 goals. And obviously a couple years before that is Jerome McGinley. But yeah, like I feel like he's probably up over 5 million a year now. Like that's probably what 30 goal scorers get. So, his price has gone up a little, but so what? Like that's a good thing. That's because he's produced for you and he's shown you that he can work there. And so you should be paying him. Like I still see some people who are like, they should trade his rights because he's at a high point. Like, I'm not on the team at all. You should re-sign him because he's going to be. If you trade him away, you're going to have to go sign someone else to play with Pastrnak who's going to cost more than that. So keep them together for now to start next season. And obviously, if you have to adjust at some point because it's not working next year, then you figure that out then. But that should be the plan.
Yeah, and let me just be clear. The only comparison between Louis Erickson and Morgan Geekie is just that they're the two last 30 goal scorers outside of those three names, because from an age perspective and style of play, there is no other really comparable between their games. That was the only reason for bringing up that name. But the other thing, Scott, and to your last point, when fans or media suggest to sell high on Geekie over the summer, my question is, okay, what exactly is the return that you're getting that is better than what Morgan Geekie is for this team right now? To your point, okay, you go out and sign somebody that's possibly more money than what Geekie provides, and you already know he's not.
Yeah, they would have to be more money if you're putting them on your first line. Like if you're signing a free agent to your top line, like that's going to be more than what you have to pay Morgan Geekie as a restricted free agent.
Yeah, and you already know, like we've talked about, that he has that chemistry with Pastrnak. There's no question mark there. You would have the question mark there with somebody else you're bringing in from the outside, or are you somebody who wants to sell high on Geekie and try to get future draft picks? Okay, well, what are the odds that a future draft pick turns out to be a 30 goal scorer, and that doesn't even help you right now? Does it help you in 10 years from now? Might not even help you with David Pastrnak's tenure in Boston. So again, I don't think trading Morgan Geekie helps this team, certainly next year and going forward, unless it's just, as Scott likes to say, a no-brainer, in which case you always have to consider. There's very seldom in sports is there an untouchable on any team, right? But yeah, practically speaking, I don't see moving on from Geekie based off the chemistry he has with Pastrnak and what he has now shown. Guys, honestly, over the last 2 seasons, he's been pretty consistently good the entire stretch outside of the first few months of this year. Like he was good all year last year. I don't think anybody was really dogging Morgan Geekie last year. And this year he's been fantastic since December, January. And Bridget, to your credit, you have been all over that since day one about how he's a smart player, and specifically with Pastrnak, they seem to have this know where the guy is without even really communicating. So yeah, I look. I earlier this year, I was more on the fence about, especially pre-trade deadline. Should you sell high on him? But I reserve the right to change my opinion as more things transpire. And the trade deadline saw a lot of movement, a major fire sale, to the point where it appeased my desire for this team to turn some pages and get some collateral back. At this stage, for me, Morgan Geekie has played his way onto this team for future years, because I think that's what's best for the team. But things change over the course of a season, and right now I'm very much team bring him back again at a fair value. But that goes without saying.
Yeah. And I will say, I think that they've already decided to do that because of he would have gotten moved already, and they wouldn't have moved out so many guys if, the sheer number of guys that have gone out if you also send him out would be just insurmountable to try to fill in the gaps in this off season. So, and before we sign off though, I did want to make sure we mention Michael Callahan as well, because he got his first NHL goal. And as a defenseman, not really expected to score. That's not really part of what he's been asked to do, but it's just nice to see how, and he's a Providence guy. I broadcast some of his games when he was towards the end of his career there in Providence, and just nice to see him get a chance this year. And I don't know what you guys think of his future with Boston in particular, not just, the Bruins organization, but if there's guys like Parker Wotherspoon or, whomever that the Bruins might move on from, do you think that Callahan gets, maybe more playing time next year, maybe more, because he only has 16 games this year? Think you see him a little bit more next year, or do you think he's probably going to be more of the same?
Well, is he still here next year? Because he's going to be a Group 6 unrestricted free agent, because he's 25 and he hasn't played enough games to remain a restricted free agent. So if the Bruins don't re-sign him before July 1, he hits the open market and can go anywhere. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens there. Like, you all obviously always want depth. I don't really see Mike Callahan as an everyday NHL player, but can he be your seventh defenseman? Sure. Like, I think he can be that and rotate in and out. So yeah, like, obviously when you get to the bottom of the defense, like, those guys aren't all coming back. Callahan, Wotherspoon, throw Jokiharju in there on the right side. Like, they're going to move on from one or two of those guys at least, but you do also need, you need someone in like that 7th, 8th, even go down to Province for like 9th, 10th guys who has some NHL experience, and Callahan does now. So like he can be that guy. And obviously it's probably looking at like a league minimum contract, but I'd be fine signing him with that kind of role in mind. Obviously he would need to clear waivers to go back to Providence next year, but yeah, I could see him as an extra defenseman.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Not a ton more to add. I mean, I think he's a good story. It was really nice to see him get rewarded with that goal last night. Local story. And so, yeah, it's always fun to see players like that get moments like that. As far as his long term in Boston, seems to be like at most like a depth signing. Do you feel differently, Bridget? Do you see him being potentially more of a fixture for the Bruins going forward?
No, I could see him third pair or extra defenseman.
Yeah.
Depending on what they decide for personnel, just who to move on from, who to keep around. Yeah, I mean, I think he could do that, but it remains to be seen considering the contract insecurity that he has right now. But anyway, guys, was that mostly what you guys wanted to talk about? Did you want to get to Pasta quickly before the end of the episode? Do you feel like we talked about him quite a bit, or?
There was something else I wanted to get to, and I wanted to give a stick tap to our line mate Bridget, to Scott, because he obviously posed this question to us last episode. And so on behalf of Scott, I wanted to gauge what Bruins Nation was feeling. And obviously I don't believe Scott gave his answer on the podcast, Bridget. I don't think you did. So let's just see what the results were and see if you guys were surprised by them or if you had any thoughts on it. But so just to reiterate for those who may not have heard the last episode, but Scott asked Bridget and I, in the unlikely hypothetical situation that Boston got the first overall pick, who would you draft? Would you draft Matthew Schaefer, who is the projected highest ranked player, or would you take Michael Misa, who's the projected highest ranked player at a position of need, which is center ice? Obviously, Matthew Schaefer's a defenseman. So the votes were 16% would take Schaefer, 81% would take Misa, and then 3% would take other. And it was a fair amount of feedback, so it was a really good sample size. Did those results surprise either of you if you just happen to see that?
Yeah, 81% is high for most polls. Like, you're normally gonna find something more in between, but yeah, and I know that some of the comments were like, "Well, I need to know more about these prospects," and I think that maybe some of the disparity comes from just knowing the need and not necessarily knowing the two guys as much.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the position. People see center, people see defenseman. They say Bruins need a center, and so they vote for the center. Like, I do think probably some of the people responding have watched some video or read some stuff and maybe done a little more homework than others. So I also appreciate more informed opinions. But no, I'm not really surprised because I think people are just drawn to the position.
I'll
And
read I'll read one of our somebody that sends us in questions all the time, so I want to read their response. Don Sweeney replied to this and said, Misa is good enough to where taking Schaefer and trying to trade for a center down the road isn't worth the hassle. If you were able to trade Schaefer for or McAvoy for a 1C in his prime, maybe, but is it worth the risk? So basically, the difference between Misa and Schaefer isn't enough where you want to like try to maneuver in a crazy way to try to find your 1C another way, or try to trade out, or trade to like one spot lower or two spots lower. And yeah, I think that that's probably how you would look at it. If you got one and your guy was Misa, and there's not really another way to get him. Like, you're not trading down to two. So you kind of just have to pull the trigger on it at one.
Well, one thing that somebody asked me a question about the differences between the players, and ultimately I think what I said was neither player pre-draft, which is the key to all of this, because nobody knows for sure, right, at all. But neither player pre-draft is labeled as a generational talent, and I don't think that, and I think that Schaefer and Misa are relatively equally good at their respective positions. I don't think the gap, based off what I've seen in their respective positions, is that large. But Scott said something earlier that is very true. Those answering this poll, some are informed, some aren't. But that's why I was curious from an experimental perspective, because I very much made it clear that the options were best player available or best player available at position of need. And conceptually, fans don't need to know the hours of highlight tape on these players to theoretically make the choice between best player available or best at the position available. And that was what I was very curious to see, because I think that in professional sports, I think, pick an arbitrary high number, 90-95% of the time, I think that a team should go for the best player available, because most of the time teams don't have as dire of one specific need. Sometimes they're okay mostly everywhere, and so they just take the best player available. Like, and then sometimes there's a team where it's like, oh no. Like, their need is so dire. And like the Patriots a couple of years ago is an example, like they needed to get, one of those best quarterbacks available. So I just thought it was a fun experiment to and also it depends on, is a certain player deemed generational? Like, is the Bruins dire need center ice, but this guy's billed as the next Cale Makar, like, and people know that in advance, then that kind of makes it different. But I thought it was a fun experiment to run based off of Scott's question.
yeah, and I will say there's a chance that people would be viewing Schaefer as generational if he had been healthy this whole season, because he gets injured in the second game of World Juniors, broke his collarbone. He just came back from that. His start to the season was he was on pace to challenge records for an under 18 OHL defenseman in terms of production. He was off to an incredible start. And so had he stayed healthy and had that kind of season, you might be hearing more Matthew Schaefer as a generational defenseman. Some people are still saying that, by the way. Some people still think that. I've seen people compare him to Scott Niedermayer. Like, if the choice is like, if you do all your homework and research and video crunching and talk to scouts and everyone you need to talk to, and you come to the conclusion that Matthew Schaefer is Scott Niedermayer and Michael Misa, with all due respect to Tyler Seguin, is Tyler Seguin, like, I'm sorry, you need to take Scott Niedermayer. Like, you're talking about one of the best defensemen ever versus a good center.
Yeah, I'm taking Scott McLaughlin every time. I think you're a generational talent, Scott, and I think you're a generational talent, Bridget. Now, I will just on that point though, Scott, real quick. Like, can we just talk about how funny this notion of comparables is? Because Corey, I believe his name is Corey. He replied to us saying who we thought some comparables were for these two players, and I saw that you responded to him saying that you saw one article out there that compared Misa to potentially Tyler Seguin, as you just mentioned. And then Schaefer was compared to Miro Heiskanen, which in my view of Schaefer's footage, I don't see Heiskanen. I see a different type of player, but regardless. Then I found an NHL.com article from last week that had NHL Central Scouting listing comparables. And what Scott sent to this kid said, Schaefer, Miro Heiskanen, Misa, Tyler Seguin. And then this article says Schaefer, Zach Werenski, Misa, Steven Stamkos, Higgins, Clayton Keller, Martone, Corey Perry, McQueen, Byfield. And it's the moral of the story is you can get 100 media members and scouts, and they will give you 100 different comparable names for the same player. Nobody has any idea. It's really unfair to try to even do that exercise. It's fun, I get it, but it's very much subjective and oftentimes inaccurate.
By the way, as someone who talks to college coaches a lot about guys that, people will ask about their comps, and every single college hockey coach in New England will say they're like Patrice Bergeron, and then just like leave it at that. It's like every single one of these guys is Patrice Bergeron. Okay.
As long as they're a two-way player.
Jacob Forsback at Carlson.
Oh.
That's right. That's right. Shout out JFK.
Yeah. So, so the last episode, I think I said.
Your mic is like coming through really weird all of a sudden.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Sounding better. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Well, Adam, maybe we can just wrap up then. But I was going to say, I was leaning Schaefer last podcast, but really what it comes down to is just how big of a gap do you think there is, or is there even a gap? Because if you think it's really close, then it's completely acceptable to go for need. But if you think there's a big gap, then count me as go for the best player.
I think that's fair. I think that's where I would land too. I just, from what I've seen, from what I've read and I've heard, I don't think it's as big of a gap. But of course, no one truly knows where these players end up. So,
like that is, I do, as I keep like watching more and reading more, that is where I find myself trending towards, is that I kind of don't think there is that big of a gap.
All right. Well, for the sake of Bridget's ears, with Scott's microphone the last 45 seconds.
I don't know what the hell happened with your microphone, but just don't talk anymore. Just hold on.
Literally nothing changed on my end.
Trust me, it doesn't sound good.
Maybe
it sounds like an elephant or something. Like
maybe it'll. That's hilarious. It does sound like an elephant. Maybe it'll sound better in the actual recording. Who knows? But in any event, thank you all very much for listening. And I will tease real quick. I know that there were some jersey leaks out there, and I know we haven't talked about it. And Bridget, don't you put up that banner, because I'm not going to talk about it now, but we will be talking about it, if not Friday, certainly over the off season as unveilings happen. So for those jersey nerds out there, like myself, and I think like Scott, and I think like Bridget maybe, but not as nerdy. Scott and I have like a 4.5 GPA with Bridget's like a 3.7.
yeah, that's not my strong suit. That and math.
Yeah. So we'll get to those things as well. And then, do you guys think, Bridget, maybe Scott, you nod yes. Oh yes. Okay. So is that tomorrow? Scott's holding up the BU. So BU and Penn State. Is that tomorrow? Thursday?
Indeed, Thursday. I'm not allowed to talk, but
no, Scott
yes.
can't.
Yeah,
Scott,
no, be quiet
Scott
over
can't
there.
talk. And then Scott, do me a favor and just nod your head yes, and Bridget, you can answer. Potentially, maybe another mailbag on the horizon, and so always submit questions. We'll try to answer them, even if it's not an official mailbag episode. So we
By the
always
way, I
appreciate
do
that
want to take
feedback.
credit. I do want to take credit for that cup because I made that cup for Scott, or the koozie, the coffee koozie. I made that for his birthday. So handmade, took me way longer than it should have.
Yes, yeah. And by the way, if the Bruins marketing department is listening, how are there not Marat Husnudinov koozies?
The koozie
With his face at the Garden, koozies. There it is. I'll send you my mailing address afterwards, Bridget. Okay.
All right, yeah, I'll just send this right. I will fold it. It's gonna be like priority mail, and we'll get it to you.
All right.
Or maybe I'll just have to see you in person at some point.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you all very much for listening. We'll talk to you on Friday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.